welcome to America's Home Cooking. This morning I'm going to talk to you about leavenings. There are just a few leavenings. We use baking powder, we use baking soda, we use egg whites. This is where we call it the air lift because we use the egg whites. We whip them until they're very firm peaks, and then we stir it into a batter which gives that lift to it. And then we have yeast. Now, yeast is done with, let's see, what can I say? Breads and rolls, basically. What we call quick breads, or like biscuits and muffins and stuff, we use baking powder and or baking soda. That's where it's used. And we also use them in cakes. Now, there are some cakes that you don't use that in, and we use air, like an angel cake. An angel cake is air. That whole thing is air. All right, then you know the yeast those, and that's pretty much it when it comes to leavening. Now, when you sit there and you overbeat something, you beat too much air into it, and it collapses because the airs actually pop to escape, and that's where you get your breads and muffins and they start to collapse, which I have showed you. I even talked about it. Okay, now, salt. If you read old recipes, the only time you hear them really using salt is when they're curing. Let me get my cookbook and I'll show you. Let me see. All right, this is how they made biscuits, which I plan to try. Now, this is in 1796, so we're going back to show you how we've changed our recipes. To make a biscuit, it's 1 pound of flour, 1 ounce butter, 1 egg wet with milk, and break while oven is heating in the same portions. You see, there's no salt there. I had talked to you not long ago that they used to have these little dishes. I mean, they were really small, but they were heavy duty, and they had the 1/4 teaspoon. This is where people salted the food at the table. Salt was considered a prized possession to have. I mean, if you didn't have salt, people really worried. That's why it was under lock and key with coffee and flour. These had to be controlled. And sugar. So these were like prized things to have. But anyway, that's leavenings that I told you. There's only those that we have. Now, baking powder and baking soda are almost alike because baking powder has cream of tartar, cornstarch, and baking soda in it, but they have a retarder. They add aluminum to it, which won't trigger it and holds it until heat hits it, and then it explodes. This is the difference. But actually, baking powder has baking soda. If you actually read it, it'll be bicarbonated soda, which is baking soda. So really, when you come down to it, baking powder really is baking soda. So we could, except that they made a combination to contain it until the heat hits it. But those are your leavenings, and if you read old recipes, they did not salt. Now, I made, what did I make? Oh, I made those cinnamon sugar biscuits. There was no salt in them, and they tasted delicious. So see, through time, we've started adding, because they wanted us to get iodine into our food, they proceeded to start adding salt to all the recipes to make sure that we get iodine. But people did get salt. It's just that they controlled the salt at the table when they did it. And that's the difference. Today we salt everything as we cook it, whereas they used to salt their own plate according to what they wanted at that time. So just some information about leavening and salt.